যে আনিল প্রেমাদান কারণ কাচু
and fiery he could be at times. Tamal Krishna Maharaj himself wrote in his essays that he submitted in the Southern Methodist University that he was often identified as hot tamali. But I had a very different perception of Tamal Krishna Maharaj. He was very caring, very affectionate, and as a result of that, I felt like being under the shelter of the elder brother, and he indeed was more than my elder brother in my spiritual life. He, just as he himself always wanted to achieve something very, very wonderful for Srila Prabhupada, he expected that everybody else also should do that, and he pushed everybody. And he pushed me in the service of Srila Prabhupada, and also he pushed me to go ahead in Srila Prabhupada's Sankirtan movement. Srila Prabhupada gave me sannyas, but at that time I was serving Srila Prabhupada, and I didn't have any chance to give any Bhagavatam class. So one day Tamal Krishna Maharaj told me that now you have to give a Bhagavatam class, you become a sannyasi. And I practically became a sannyasi from a new bhakta. And now at that time in Vrindavan, due to Srila Prabhupada's presence, many leading devotees were there. All of them were very, very senior, very learned. So I naturally felt very shy, and I said, look, I can't give a class in this assembly. But he pushed me. He called the temple president and arranged that I must give a class. And then, while I gave the class, Tamal Krishna Maharaj had to be with Srila Prabhupada because one of us had to be with him, with his divine grace. So Tamal Krishna Maharaj, after the class, when I went back, he asked me, so, how was the class? I said, I don't know. He said, what? He said, but what was the reaction? And so I told him, I don't know. So he said, what do you mean by you don't know? I mean, you should at least have noticed the reaction of the devotees. I said, well, throughout the class, I just looked down at the floor and never looked up. And a similar thing happened. He put me on a test in 1978, soon after Srila Prabhupada's disappearance during the Mayapur festival. The day Tamal Krishna Maharaj was supposed to give me the class, we were sharing the same room. And he just came and told me, so today you are giving the class. And I felt that all the devotees will feel so disappointed because everyone looks up to the class of a living devotee, looks forward to a class from a living devotee like Tamal Krishna Maharaj. But here he is pushing me, he is requesting me to give the class. So, but when Tamal Krishna Maharaj decides something, no one but Srila Prabhupada could change his mind. So he pushed me to give a class, and I had to give that class. In this way, I have seen that he always pushed, and I feel greatly indebted to him for that, because by nature I prefer to be at the end, at the back. I am a rather shy person by nature, and feel uncomfortable going up in the front. But it was Tamal Krishna Maharaj who always pushed me. And he criticized me when it was necessary, and he also appreciated me when he saw that something nice came out of it. Another pushing of Tamal Krishna Maharaj, I remember, Maharaj was a very, very systematic person. Once, when he decided to write a drama on Lord Jagannath, that also happened in 1983. Maharaj invited me to the Ratha Jatra festival in Oklahoma farm, and in the morning he asked me to give a class on Lord Jagannath, and after the class he decided to write a drama on Lord Jagannath, and so it was wonderful. He wanted to write a drama on Lord Jagannath, but he wanted to prepare himself for that, and he got Rupa Goswami's Lalita Madhav to study and Bharat Muni's Natya Shastra. He really went deep into studying all the different scriptures that on drama. And he wanted to study Rupa Goswami's Lalita Madhava, which is a drama, and he gave me 10 days to translate that book into English. and I had to do that. And he not only assigned the responsibility, but he made sure that one fulfilled that responsibility, and fortunately by Krishna's mercy I could stay up to his So that is how wonderful Tamal Krishna Maharaj was. And one last thing I just wanted to say. Tamal Krishna Maharaj was actually very dear to Srila Prabhupada. And like one day, rather not one day, this incident, when Prabhupada was in Vrindavan, practically every morning when Srila Prabhupada used to wake up, the first thing he used to ask, where is Tamal? And I used to just go and tell Tamal Krishna Maharaj that Prabhupada is calling him. And when Tamal Krishna Maharaj used to come to Srila Prabhupada, and they used to have such intimate discussions, and Tamal Krishna Maharaj used to ask questions to Srila Prabhupada that I could never imagine that anyone else could. Like he was literally empowered to churn out the most profound feelings of Srila Prabhupada. His Holiness Tamal Krishna Goswami Maharaj ki.
Om Agyantimirandasya Gyananjanachalakaya Chakshuru Medhamjena Tasmai Sri Guruje Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patithanam Bhavanibhyo Vaishnavibhyo Namo. Srila Prabhupada would explain that a great devotee preacher is soft like a rose and hard like a thunderbolt. Tamal Krishna Goswami Maharaj very perfectly fulfilled these qualifications according to the needs. One of the attributes of Goswami Maharaj that was of such an extraordinary degree was his utter willingness to carry out Srila Prabhupada's instructions. The first time I ever met Tamal Krishna Goswami was in Bombay in 1971, March. There was a very, very wonderful preaching program at Cross Maidan where about 20 to 30,000 people were in the audience. And one devotee brought me up to sit on the stage close to Prabhupada when he was giving his lecture. After the lecture, Srila Prabhupada was walking just in front of where I was sitting. And living in Himalayas with sadhus, I understood when a holy man comes, you should take dust from his feet and put it on your head. So I reached down to touch Prabhupada's feet. And when I was just inches away, Tamal Krishna Goswami, his voice was like thunder. He said, "No one touches Prabhupada's feet." So I was shattered. I thought that I just made a big offense, but I didn't touch his feet. So Prabhupada looked at me and smiled and said, "You can touch my feet." So after touching his feet and putting dust on my head, I looked over at Tamal Krishna Goswami Maharaj, and he was just looking at Prabhupada. The second time I met him was in Vrindavan in November of 1971. At that time, I had not joined ISKCON. I was living in Vrindavan, and Prabhupada came with about 30 devotees, Malati Mataji was included, just for about a week. And Prabhupada was taking everyone on pilgrimage. And every afternoon, Prabhupada would give darshan to his old godbrothers and his friends and Brijavasis, and no devotees were allowed. All the devotees, ISKCON devotees, were supposed to do Harinam Sankirtan at that time through the streets of Vrindavan. And of course, Tamal Krishna Goswami was the GBC. So I would sit in those darshans every day from the beginning to the end. So one day he came in and he looked around and he saw me sitting there, and there was nobody else in the room. It was just Prabhupada and myself. And he said with thunderous voice, "No devotees are allowed in these darshans. You must go on Harinam Sankirtan." And at that time I had long matted hair, so I just showed him a strand of my hair. And I said, "But I'm not a devotee." So Tamal Krishna Goswami looked at Prabhupada, and Prabhupada looked at me and looked at him and smiled and said, "Let him stay." So years later, I told Goswami Maharaj these stories. And he told me that Prabhupada would very often do these things to him. He would give him an order to carry out, which would make him incredibly unpopular. And then after carrying out the order, Prabhupada would go against him. To me, this is a symbol that Tamal Krishna Goswami Maharaj was, because Prabhupada told him, nobody should touch my feet. He was not concerned with popularity. He was not concerned with his own ego, his own position. He was simply concerned with carrying out the order of Prabhupada, with pleasing Srila Prabhupada. And because he had this quality, Srila Prabhupada had such trust in Tamal Krishna Goswami Maharaj. He would assign Goswami Maharaj projects that were so dear and intimate to Prabhupada's heart, and that practically nobody else could do. When Prabhupada first went back to India with a group of devotees, his Western disciples, it was very difficult for them to deal with any type of management in India. In fact, Srila Prabhupada practically had to do everything himself. But the one person that he had such great trust in was Tamal Krishna Goswami. He made him the GPC. Every year, devotees from all over the world go to Sri Mayapur. We should all understand the fact that we can go to Mayapur to celebrate Gaur Purnima and remember Srila Prabhupada is very much due to the incredible sacrifice of Tamal Krishna Goswami Maharaj. Prabhupada wanted land in Mayapur so much. He found a plot of land that he really wanted to purchase. He sent leading devotees to go to that place to purchase the land. Now there was a group of people who absolutely did not want Prabhupada and his devotees in Mayapur. That group of people convinced the sellers of the land not to sell it to us. Convinced our own lawyers that we shouldn't buy it. And every devotee Prabhupada would send down to buy it, those people would convince those devotees to give up the idea. Prabhupada sent several of his leaders, and they all came back and basically told him it's impossible to get that land. So what did Srila Prabhupada do? He called upon Tamal Krishna Goswami Maharaj. Brahmananda Prabhu recently told me that Prabhupada called upon Tamal Krishna Goswami for this service because he knew there was no one else in all of our society who could do this service. He ordered him, go and buy the land. Goswami Maharaj told me the story. Prabhupada gave him the money, rupees, and it was a lot of rupees. And then Prabhupada showed him how to carry the rupees. He took a piece of cloth, I think it was like a copan, just a piece of a torn dhoti, and he taught him how to wrap the money up in that cloth, and then Prabhupada personally wrapped it around his waist, like a sadhu money belt. And he sent him to Mayapur. After several days of very intense devotional service, he convinced the sellers to give them the land. He told us that these were just simple farmers who were selling the land. And although it wasn't a lot of money, it was a lot for them. So they had a whole group of people in a circle around Tamal Krishna Goswami and the seller with machetes and daggers and spears and whatever else they had because they wanted to protect anybody from stealing the money. And then the lawyer of the seller, he was also a simple farmer. He said that they had to write down with a pencil and paper the entire serial number of every rupee note. And in those days, there was no 1,000 rupees or 500 rupees. It was all like 50 rupees and 10 rupees. So for about 5 hours, he was sitting with these people with knives and daggers around him while they were writing down each serial number of the rupees. Ultimately, it was complete. He returned by bus or by train and then bus to Calcutta. When he arrived at Calcutta, it was after midnight. The temple was pitch dark. Everyone was asleep. Except Prabhupada's light was on and his door was open. Goswami Maharaj approached Prabhupada's door and Prabhupada looked at him and said, "I have been waiting all night for you. Please come in." Tamal Krishna Goswami Maharaj handed Srila Prabhupada the deed to the land in Mayapur. He said, Srila Prabhupada, the land is yours. Prabhupada had tears in his eyes. He got up and affectionately embraced Tamal Krishna Goswami and told him, thank you very much. He knew he had been awake without sleep for about 3 days. He said, thank you very much. Now, go take rest. Tamal Krishna Goswami told us a very interesting story of, to the degree, he would just do anything for Prabhupada, service. He explained how once he and Gargamuni, Maharaj at the time, they were making life members on Prabhupada's order. And they went to one very wealthy cinema house owner. And he was very influential. It was in the middle of the summer. It was over 100 degrees Fahrenheit. And they asked him, would you become a life member? And he explained everything. He said, it's too hot outside. They said, well, what does that have to do with becoming a life member? He said, it's too hot. So they were explaining everything about ISKCON and everything about Prabhupada's mission. And whatever arguments they presented, this man's reply was, it's too hot out. So finally they said, well, what do we have to do? It's hot. We know it's hot. We're hotter than anyone. We're going from place to place to place, and you can cool us off by becoming a life member. So he told his servant, bring limca. Limca is a very sticky, sweet, artificial lemon, soft drink, carbonated. So he said, they put it down, and he said, the man said, now pour it over your head. They're both sannyasis, Dandas. They said, well, drink it. If you want, we'll drink it. He said, no. He wrote out the check to be a life member, put it in his drawer. He said, I'll only give it to you when you pour it over your head. So here's Tamal Krishna Goswami, leading sannyasi of the Hare Krishna movement, pouring limca over his head. So he gave him the check and he took it. Tamal Krishna Goswami Maharaj would simply do anything to serve Srila Prabhupada at any time. And Prabhupada would call upon him again and again and again from anywhere, at any time, when there was a service that was very, very essential for our society. I think what Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj has said is very significant. During Prabhupada's last days, every morning, first thing, he was asking, where is Tamal? We have such a deep debt for the service that he rendered. And on this very auspicious occasion, I feel very fortunate to have the opportunity to share some appreciation. He was one of Srila Prabhupada's very, very intimate, confidential associates. And I believe that wherever Prabhupada is, Tamal Krishna Goswami will always be there. Thank you very much.
Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjanashulakaya Chakshurunmilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Vancha Kalpatarubhescha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. So I also feel very unqualified. In my case, I feel very unqualified to be here among such exalted devotees as all of you who are here today in the presence of their lordships and all of their wonderful expansions and associates, including yourselves. But because I was asked to speak, I will say a few words in remembrance of my very dear and beloved spiritual Lord and Master, His Divine Grace, Srila Goswami Maharaj. I feel very fortunate that despite all my disqualifications, he accepted me as his disciple. I first came to meet him about 20 years ago. I had the dubious distinction of being one of the first people to sue the Hare Krishna movement in Fiji, the island that I come from. And we were fighting in the Supreme Court, a final battle. Our purpose, the family, my purpose was to somehow remove the Hare Krishna movement from Fiji. And so I was the sworn public number one enemy of the Hare Krishnas in Fiji, and obviously all over the world and everywhere else they might be. So, but by the intervention of some very exalted personalities, I came to have darshan of Goswami Maharaj, and to actually ask him some questions that I might be able to prove our point to them outside of court as well, that we were right, that those of us who didn't agree with the Hare Krishnas, who hated the Hare Krishnas intensely, that we were right, and that they were just a bunch of, like that Hindi movie that came out, a bunch of drug pushers and womanizers. Very fortunately, at the time, before I say very fortunately, at the time I was the chief executive officer, the managing director, and the chairman of one of Fiji's largest companies, group of companies. We are recognized as one of the top companies by the United States Embassy in Fiji. And so when I went to him, and in the usual manner, as I felt, the devotees tricked me by having me go through Bhagavatam class, Guru Puja, and Kirtan, before they let me speak to Goswami Maharaj, although we had an appointment with one another at a particular time in the morning, at 6:30 in the morning. They didn't let me see him till about 9:30. All the time I'm thinking in my heart that this is great proof of how much these people are rascals. Finally, they whisked me away, 5 miles away, where Goswami Maharaj actually was, but I didn't see him at the program. I guess they didn't want to know what happened between the two of us, because our family is also known to be a very violent family. My father was the chairman of the opposition party, and we were known to be people who would very seriously harm other people, physically and otherwise, if we didn't agree with their political philosophy. So anyway, when I went to see him, I sat in front of him, and I didn't say anything, thinking to myself that since he was elder to me, and he was, at least in my eyes, some sort of devotee and some sort of a sannyasi, that he should speak first. But he didn't speak either, and for about a good half an hour, we were just looking at one another, and I thought maybe we're supposed to be speaking from heart to heart, and not say any words to one another. And then he spoke, and I was surprised to know how much he knew about me and how little I knew about him. And then one of the first things he said to me, he says, I understand you're a very good businessman, very successful businessman. So all successful businessmen have a schedule, a daily schedule. They know what they're going to be doing today. So he said, do you have a schedule? And I said, yes, I do. He said, well, write it down for me. So I wrote down my schedule. And he looked at the schedule, and on the back of the schedule, he wrote another schedule and gave it back to me. And said, use this. If you use this schedule, you'll be more successful as a businessman. I thought I'd come to him to ask him some questions so that I could be clear in my mind that I was doing the right thing. And here he was trying to help me become a better businessman. So then I let my guard down a little and asked him some questions. And he answered those questions, and I felt a lot of satisfaction in the questions that he answered, that he answered, and how he answered those questions. And we were supposed to, he had arranged for us to have breakfast. So every so often, the devotees would come in to tell him that the breakfast was ready and that, we could take breakfast, and Goswami Maharaj would tell them that we'd be there by and by. And this continued for about 4 hours. Finally, he said to me, he said, look, he says, I know you're very unhappy with us, but I'll offer you a challenge. He said, we will not defend ourselves in court. We'll withdraw our defense if you do one thing. He said, for 1 month, I would like you to follow these instructions that I'm giving you now, that I'll be giving you. And if after doing what I tell you to do for 1 month, if you feel that we are wrong, that we are who you think we are, then we will not protest. And you can do whatever you like to us here in Fiji. But he says, if you're wrong, if you figure after that month that you're wrong, then I'd like you to put a full-page ad in the local newspaper apologizing for what you're doing and stating that you're wrong and that we are correct, we're right, and that you would recommend that everybody join us. I was so sure he was wrong and that I was right that I said to him, why 1 month? I said, I will try it out for 6 months. So he gave me some instructions to chant Hare Krishna, to read from the Krishna book, from the Nectar of Instruction, and from the Bhagavad Gita, and to do some menial service at the Sunday feast. One of the reasons I was very unhappy, our family was very unhappy with the Hare Krishnas, was they built a temple right next to our house. Not only that, they stole 1.5 feet of land from our house. Worse than that, they put out 4 big megaphones, big speakers outside of the temple, and at 4:30 in the morning, the devotees would play their kirtals and the wampers so loudly that I would literally levitate in my bed. My wife was very concerned because I would literally be jumping out of bed when Mangalarti started at 4:30 in the morning. And our business was a 24-hour business. We had a very large factory producing grain lentil, split mung beans and grain flours, etc. So there'd be times I'd come back from the evening shift at about 2 o'clock in the morning and go to bed at around 3, and at 4:30 this Mangalarti would start. And you can imagine why I hated the Hare Krishna. On the one hand, I had a baby son who wouldn't let me sleep anyway, and then at 4:30 in the morning, the Hare Krishnas would start. So when I went back to my hometown, that night I had a dream. And as a result of that dream, I felt that I had to make some change in my life. In that dream, Lord Shiva came to me, and I was a very devout worshipper of Lord Shiva. I still am. And he, in my dream, told me that this was my spiritual master who had spoken to me. And so, for me, I was horrified with that dream. I woke up sweating, thinking how I'm going to explain this to all the people in Fiji that I'm now joining the Hare Krishna. So I thought, well, maybe I was hallucinating, and I'm sure that it's not the case. This is not the case. Oh, I'm still right. When I went to the temple, the first day when I went to the temple, I was totally amazed at how nicely everybody received me. And I was totally taken aback. And in less than 1 month, I realized that I was wrong. The difficulty was how to prove this to the rest of my family. And more difficult was how we're going to stop this case from proceeding in the Supreme Court. Because for our family, that would be a huge slap on our face. So I wrote Goswami Maharaj explaining my predicament. And he wrote back, accepting me as his disciple and saying that I didn't have to put that advertisement in the newspaper, that he would reduce my pain by that method and by other things. And a month later, he came back to Fiji. And at the time when we met, he asked me to write down any bad qualities that I had. And I could think of only 1 or 2. I was very arrogant. I was a very proud person. I always thought I was right. And so then he started telling me his other qualities. And he said, well, I want you to write this one down and that one. That you're very mean, that you're very stupid, that you're a fool. And we wrote down something like 30 bad qualities. Then he asked me to go back home that night and come back the next morning and visit him again with more qualities. I wrote down 2 more, thinking that at least I should find something as an offering that, I should write down. So then he told me that this is who I was. This is you. All these bad qualities is you. And you have no good qualities. So being the leader of the business community in Fiji, the one who would negotiate all contracts between foreign companies and the Fiji government, being like Ralph made it here with the Consumer Council in Fiji, the vice chairman of the Fiji Manufacturers Council, etc. I had a great ego. And so I felt smashed and I started crying. I'd never cried in my life like this. I just started crying. So he came and hugged me and he said, anyway, he said, I will drown you with my love. So I came to recognize very quickly that Goswami Maharaj was like very hot sugarcane juice. But on the one hand, was very much a desirable taste to have of sugarcane in the mouth, but it was just too hot to handle. And all through the 20 years, except a few years I would say, this is how I saw him. And he had written I remember him writing an offering to Srila Prabhupada where he said, oh, your lotus feet are bittersweet, so bittersweet. And I thought that would describe him perfectly. That on the one hand, he was very hot, but every time he would call us to go to him, we would think, now what? What is he going to do to us this time? What hot sauce are we going to get this time from him? And yet he was so sweet that we would not, want to refuse the opportunity of having darshan. And so, in the last few years, 2 to 5 years, I would say, we saw a noticeable change in terms of his dealings with us. He would always consult us, but in the very last discussion I had with him on the phone while he was in England, he called up and he said, "This time I want you to listen to me. I don't want you to discuss anything." Normally, if he would say something, most times I would disagree with him. I would say, "No, I don't agree with that. This is how I think it should happen." And we'd have a back and forth discussion. And sometimes I would do what he wanted me to do, and sometimes I would do what I wanted to do. Most times I would be wrong, but that was okay. I felt that at least I had to do what I felt my conscience was the right thing to do. But this time he asked me not to interrupt him from speaking. And he said to me, he said, "Lord Nityananda's mercy is unlimited." And he says, "I want you that whenever you deal with any of our family members in the Hare Krishna movement, that you understand that Lord Nityananda's mercy is unlimited, and that you have the shelter of his mercy, and that similarly everybody else also does, and that we must give this shelter to everybody else." So it reminded me of how he was very much pushing this idea of Srila Prabhupada's family being one family, and that there were no boundaries. There were disciples of other spiritual masters who would call him and have very close association with him. And sometimes it would surprise me that devotees who I thought would be wasting his time were trying to get in touch with him, and he would spend all time with them very sincerely, very lovingly. He would remember their names, despite the fact that I would not remember their names. And this is the lasting impression that I was left with about Goswami Maharaj, that he very sincerely loved all members of Srila Prabhupada's family, even those who had violent disagreements with him. And if he wanted his disciples to do anything, it was that they would continue that legacy of loving every member of the family and being exemplary family members of this very exalted family of Srila Prabhupada and the Brahmavamsa Gaudiya Parampara. And I'm, again, very, very unqualified. I'm very taken aback that I was asked to speak. But I would make a request to all of you, and that is that you please allow us to serve you all. That if there is any service that we can do, and we know that we can be of some service, you please allow us to do that service. And that you bless us unlimitedly. You please always keep us in your shelter, so that we may please Goswami Maharaj and please all of you as much as we possibly can. Thank you very much.